The year was 2341. The sky above Earth no longer looked bright blue. It was gray and heavy, covered with strange moving clouds that were not clouds at all. They were the shadows of giant ships that floated high above the cities. The world had seen wars before, but never like this one. Humanity was no longer fighting itself. It was fighting something far beyond its own kind. The invaders came without warning. People first saw them as glowing lights in the night sky, moving in ways no human ship ever could. Some thought they were stars falling. Some thought they were miracles. But when the lights came closer, the truth burned itself across the sky. They were not stars. They were not miracles. They were the Varn. The Varn were tall and pale creatures with smooth gray skin and no eyes. Their ships were shaped like long blades cutting through the air without sound. They came not to speak but to take. They saw Earth as a resource, not a home. To them, humans were only an obstacle between them and what they wanted. When the Varn first appeared, Earth tried to fight back. Every nation sent its armies. Missiles filled the sky. Fleets of jets raced to meet the enemy. But the Varn ships glowed with strange blue light, and every missile that came near simply melted away. The human pilots never stood a chance. One by one they fell, their machines burning in the air. In only 1 week, the major cities were under Varn control. Towers that once shined with light were turned into silent gray structures covered with alien machines. Streets that once echoed with laughter now carried only the sound of the Varn walking. Their ships floated like clouds, watching everything below. Some humans were taken as slaves to build new structures for the Varn. Others fled into forests, mountains, and deserts. There were whispers of hidden groups that refused to give up, small pockets of resistance that moved in secret and struck when they could. One of them was Ryan. Ryan was not a soldier. He had been a signal engineer before the invasion, working at an old communication station on the edge of a city. When the Varn came, the station was nearly destroyed, but Ryan stayed. He repaired what he could, hiding from the patrols that moved through the ruins. The building stood tall but cracked, its metal frame shining faintly in the dull light. From its broken windows, Ryan could see the alien ships above. Every night when the world grew quiet, Ryan sent out signals into space. He used old frequencies that no one remembered, trying to call for help. He did not know who would hear. Maybe no one would, but it was all he could do. He often sat in the dark, watching the lights flicker on the control panel. He had a small transmitter, a few batteries, and a cracked screen that showed only static. He spoke softly into the old microphone. "This is Ryan calling from Earth. If anyone can hear me, we need help. They have taken everything. We are still fighting, but we are losing." He said those words every night, even though he knew no one might ever answer. Yet one night, something strange happened. As he spoke, he heard a faint sound between the static. It was not a human voice, nor the noise of machines. It was something soft, like a rhythm. It almost sounded alive. He leaned closer, turning the dial slowly. The sound grew louder. It came in waves, like breathing or the beating of a heart. For a moment, Ryan thought his mind was playing tricks on him. The world had changed so much that even silence felt dangerous. But then he realized that the signal had a pattern. It repeated at regular intervals, like a message hidden within noise. He recorded it and listened again. The rhythm was unlike anything he had ever heard before. It reminded him of something natural, like the sound of waves hitting a shore or the wind moving through trees. It was almost like the earth itself was whispering through the radio. Ryan could not understand it, but it gave him hope. He saved the recording and decided to study it later. For the first time in months, he smiled. Outside the tower, the world was quiet. The Varn rarely came close to the ruins at night. They seemed to avoid the darker places of the city, as if something there made them uneasy. Some said it was because of the old human machines. Others said the earth itself was beginning to resist them. Ryan had heard stories from other survivors, stories about strange events happening across the planet. In the forests, the trees had started to grow faster, almost overnight. In the oceans, the tides had changed direction, confusing even the Varn ships. Animals that used to avoid humans were now gathering near human camps. It sounded impossible, but Ryan wanted to believe it. Maybe the planet was not as helpless as it seemed. One day, while scavenging for supplies, Ryan met a small group of survivors who had come from the countryside. They looked tired and thin, but their eyes were bright with determination. Their leader was an older man named Oren. He had once been a teacher before everything changed. "We heard your signal," Oren said when they met near the tower. "You're the one who keeps sending messages to space." Ryan nodded. "I don't know if anyone's listening." Oren smiled weakly. "Someone might be. But even if no one out there answers, we need people like you. You remind us we're still alive." The group decided to stay near the tower. Together, they began to repair the old machines, hoping to make the signal stronger. Ryan taught them how to connect the wires and use the panels. In return, they shared food and protected the area from patrols. At night, they sat around small fires and told stories. Some spoke of strange movements in the wild. A young woman named Mira told them she had seen wolves moving together in large packs, not hunting but watching the sky. Another said the whales had been seen close to the coastlines, singing loudly even during storms. Ryan listened carefully. He thought about the rhythm he had recorded on the radio. It had sounded alive just like the stories. Maybe it was not just noise. Maybe it was something trying to speak. The next morning he played the recording for the group. They sat quietly as the sound filled the room, a deep, steady pulse, soft but powerful. Mira closed her eyes and said it made her feel calm, like standing near the sea. Oren said it felt like the heartbeat of the world. Ryan decided to follow the signal. He changed the antenna's direction and began to map where the rhythm was strongest. To his surprise, it was not coming from the sky. It was coming from deep within the planet. As days passed, the signal grew stronger. It began to spread through the old machines, through wires, even through the ground itself. Sometimes when they touched the metal walls, they could feel a faint vibration, as if the earth was breathing. Then came the day when the Varn noticed. One of their ships flew low over the ruins. Its shadow covered the tower and a beam of blue light scanned the area. The group hid beneath the floor, holding their breath. The sound of the ship's engines was cold and sharp. It stayed for several minutes before moving on. After it left, the rhythm on the radio changed. It became faster, louder, more urgent. It was as if the signal was warning them. Ryan felt a strange pull in his chest, like the world was trying to tell him something. That night, a storm came. The wind howled through the broken buildings and lightning flashed across the sky. The rain fell heavy, washing away the dust and ash. Ryan stayed inside the control room, watching the instruments. The radio's screen glowed brighter than ever before, and the rhythm turned into a clear pattern of pulses. He began to understand that it was not random. It was communication, primitive, slow, but real. He didn't know how he knew it, but he felt it deep inside. When morning came, the storm was gone and the city looked cleaner than it had in months. Trees had grown through the cracks in the streets overnight. Birds flew in large groups, their wings catching the sunlight. Ryan stood outside the tower and looked at the horizon. The world still looked wounded, but it no longer felt dead. Something had changed. Something was moving beneath the surface of the planet. He did not know what it was, but he believed it was on their side. For the first time since the invasion began, he whispered not into the microphone but to the world itself. "If you can hear us," he said softly, "we are still here." And somewhere far away, deep in the soil under the oceans, through the roots of the forests and the song of the whales, the planet seemed to answer with a gentle pulse. Earth was listening. The morning after the storm, the air around the ruined city felt different. It was fresh, almost alive. The wind carried the smell of wet soil and leaves, not the dry dust that had covered everything for months. Ryan stood on the tower roof and looked at the distant hills. The world looked like it was breathing again. He could still hear the faint pulse through the radio system. It came in steady waves, calm and rhythmic, as if the earth itself was humming. Ryan knew it was not a normal sound. He had worked with machines all his life, but nothing in his experience matched this. It was too natural, too balanced, like the heartbeat of something vast. Oren climbed the stairs to the roof, holding a small metal box that contained batteries and wires. His hands were rough and his clothes worn, but his eyes were full of quiet strength. "The others are awake," Oren said. "We found more food near the train station. But there were tracks there, strange ones." Ryan looked down. "Varn?" Oren shook his head. "No, something else. They looked like animal tracks, but too many, moving in the same direction, almost like soldiers marching." Ryan frowned. "Animals don't move like that." "Not before," Oren replied. "But maybe now they do." Later that day, Mira and the others returned from their search around the outskirts of the city. They brought fruits and clean water from a nearby forest. Mira said the trees there were growing fast, as if they had waited for the rain. The forest had changed. The ground was soft. the air full of tiny lights that moved like glowing dust. It felt peaceful, Mira said as she placed the basket near the fire. But when we left, I heard something moving behind the trees. It was big. I thought it was watching us. Ryan did not answer at first. He was thinking about the rhythm on the radio and the strange sign spreading across the planet. He turned to the group and said, "Maybe it is all connected. The animals, the plants, even the sound from the ground. Maybe Earth is reacting to what is happening." Oren looked thoughtful. "Reacting how?" "Like it is defending itself," Ryan said. "Like it knows it is under attack." The group fell silent. The fire crackled softly. They all wanted to believe him, but the idea seemed too large to understand. Could the Earth itself fight back? That night, Ryan could not sleep. He sat near the radio again, listening to the pulse. It was stronger now, and between the pulses he heard faint clicks and tones. He began to write them down. There was a pattern, long, short, long. It reminded him of code. Maybe it was a kind of language. He adjusted the antenna and followed the strongest signal. It led toward the south, near the forests where Mira had gone earlier. The waves were not random. They carried energy, small vibrations that moved through the air, through the ground, through water. Suddenly, the signal shifted. The pulse became fast, sharp like a warning. The lights in the tower flickered. Ryan looked out the window and saw a faint blue glow on the horizon. Varn patrols. Their flying machines were moving through the sky again. He rushed down to wake the others. "They are coming this way," he said. "We need to hide." The group moved quickly. They covered the radio equipment with old metal sheets and hid in the lower rooms. Through the cracks in the walls, they could see the blue beams of light scanning the ruins. The air felt heavy. The Varn moved slowly, searching for any sign of human life. But something unexpected happened. When one of the Varn ships came close to the tower, the ground near it began to shake. The concrete cracked. From beneath, thick vines broke through, wrapping around the ship's landing gear. The alien craft tried to lift off, but the vines held tight, glowing faintly with a strange green light. Then, without warning, the ship's systems failed. Its lights dimmed and it crashed into the side of a building. The sound echoed through the empty city. The other Varn ships quickly pulled back, moving away from the area. The group inside the tower stared in silence. "What was that?" Mira whispered. Rian looked at the floor, his heart racing. "It's happening," he said. "The Earth is fighting back." When the danger passed, they went outside. The wrecked ship lay half buried under thick roots. The metal of the ship was covered in a thin layer of moss, even though only minutes had passed since the crash. It looked as if the planet itself was trying to absorb the machine. Rian touched the vine carefully. It was warm. The rhythm from the radio echoed faintly through it. He could feel the same pulse in the ground beneath his feet. In the following days, strange reports spread among the surviving groups of humans. Ryan's tower had become a meeting point for messengers who traveled through the ruins. They brought news from other lands. In the north, the forest had grown too thick for the Varn machines to enter. Their engines failed when they tried. In the oceans, entire fleets of Varn carriers had vanished, swallowed by storms that formed too suddenly to be natural. In the desert, sand moved like waves, bearing alien outposts in hours. People began to say that the planet had woken up. They called it by many names: Gaia, the Mother, the living Earth. For the first time in many years, hope returned to human hearts. Rian continued to study the pulse. He realized it was not just sound, but communication. The creatures of the planet seemed to be responding to it. He observed birds flying in patterns that matched the rhythm. Even insects buzzed in the same timing. It was like the world had become one great network of life working together. One evening, while sitting outside, Mira pointed at the sky. "Look," she said. Hundreds of birds were flying together, forming a spiral shape that reached toward the clouds. They moved with perfect coordination, no chaos, no fear. "It was beautiful," Oren said softly. "They are not just flying. They are signaling." Ryan listened to the rhythm of their wings. It matched the pulse of the Earth. He realized the animals were sending messages through sound and movement. The Varn had no understanding of it. To them, it was only noise. But to the planet, it was communication, a call to defend and protect. Later that night, the group heard distant thunder. It was not a storm this time, but explosions. The Varn were attacking the forests. From the tower roof, they could see fire in the distance. The aliens were trying to burn their way through the growing wilderness. Ryan felt anger rising inside him. "We can't let them destroy it," he said. Mira asked, "What can we do?" "We have no weapons." Ryan looked at the radio. "Maybe we don't need weapons. Maybe we can call for help." He turned the dials and sent the rhythm he had recorded back into the air. The pulse echoed across the frequencies, repeating again and again. The ground responded with a soft vibration. Hours later, they heard a deep sound, like the roar of the ocean even though they were far from the sea. The earth beneath them trembled. The wind grew stronger. In the direction of the burning forest, dark clouds gathered and heavy rain began to fall. The flames disappeared within minutes. Everyone stared in silence. Mira's voice was quiet but full of awe. "It listened to you." Ryan shook his head. "Not to me, to itself. I just reminded it that we are part of it." The next morning, the forest stood green again. The fire had left no mark. The Varn attack force had vanished. The only trace was the black remains of their machines, half buried under vines and roots. Days passed and the humans began to rebuild small shelters near the tower. They started planting crops again, and for the first time the soil felt rich and soft. They lived with care, taking only what they needed. The animals no longer feared them. Deer came close to drink from the same wells. Birds nested near their shelters. The bond between humans and the natural world was growing stronger. The rhythm from the earth could still be heard through the radio, steady and calm. One evening, Ryan spoke to Oren while watching the sunset. The sky was golden, and for the first time in months it looked peaceful. "Do you think the Varn will leave?" Ryan asked. Oren looked at the horizon. "They will try to stay, but they cannot live on a world that refuses them. This planet is alive, and it remembers who belongs here." Ryan nodded. "Then we must protect it as it protects us." As night fell, the stars shone bright again. The tower lights flickered softly, powered by the energy of the earth itself. The world that had once been silent was now full of quiet strength. Deep underground, through roots and stone, the pulse continued to spread. It reached mountains, oceans, and forests. Every living creature felt it. The same message, clear and strong. The days grew warmer as the sun rose higher in the gray sky. The ruins that once felt cold and empty now looked alive with green growth. Plants had started to climb the broken walls. Trees had taken root through cracks in the roads. The city that had been a symbol of loss was slowly turning into a place of quiet hope. Ryan worked every morning in the control room, studying the strange rhythm that had saved them so many times. The pulse had changed again. It was no longer just sound. It carried patterns, deeper layers that reminded him of music. The waves moved in harmony, like a song only the earth could sing. Mira often joined him, watching the lights on the screen. She could not understand the signals, but she said the rhythm made her feel calm, almost peaceful. "It sounds alive," she said one morning. "Like it is breathing with us." Ryan nodded. "It is not just a signal anymore. It is communication. The earth is speaking to itself through every living thing." Oren entered the room carrying a small piece of metal in his hands. It was part of an old Varn device they had found near the forest. "Their machines are starting to fail," he said. "They cannot stay long on this planet. Something is breaking their technology." Ryan examined the metal. It was covered with small spots of corrosion that looked like roots spreading across its surface. "It is the same pattern I saw on their ships after the vines caught them," he said. "It looks like the planet is eating their machines." Oren smiled faintly. "Then the planet is doing what we could not." That day, Ryan tried to connect the radio signal to the remains of the Varn device. The result was surprising. The pulse from the earth passed through the alien metal, and for a brief moment, the lights on the broken device came to life. The screen showed strange shapes, almost like symbols. They glowed in green and blue before fading away. "What was that?" Mira asked. "I think it is translation," Ryan said softly. "The earth is learning their technology. It understands them better than we do." The discovery gave the humans new hope. If the planet could adapt to alien technology, then maybe it could defend itself completely. Still, Ryan knew there was a risk. The Varn were not going to leave quietly. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, Ryan climbed to the roof. The air was cool, and the wind carried soft whispers from the forest. It almost sounded like thousands of small voices singing together. The melody was gentle, full of life and warmth. He closed his eyes and listened. The rhythm matched the pulse from his radio. The sound was everywhere now, in the ground, in the air, in the trees. It was not just noise. It was unity. Below the tower, the others gathered around small fires. Children laughed for the first time in many months. People were no longer just surviving. They were living again. That night, Rian had a dream. He stood in a vast forest surrounded by light. The trees moved gently and every leaf glowed softly. In the distance, he saw animals. Wolves, deer, birds, and whales floating in the sky like spirits of the sea. Their eyes shined like stars. A deep voice echoed around him. It was not a voice made of words, but of feeling. It spoke through the wind, through the heartbeat of the planet. "You have called us," the voice said. "We remember your kind. You are part of us. Together we will heal." Rian woke suddenly. His heart was racing and his hands were trembling. The dream had felt real. He could still hear the echo of the voice in his mind. He ran to the control room and turned on the radio. The rhythm was faster now. The planet was speaking again, sending waves of sound across every frequency. Mira and Oren joined him, their faces full of confusion. "What is happening?" Mira asked. Rian's voice was steady but full of awe. "It is calling to all life. It is forming a connection. The planet is uniting us." At that moment, the ground began to shake gently, not with destruction but with energy. Outside, the sky glowed faintly green. The trees swayed even though there was no wind. Birds took flight in perfect circles, their wings shining in the strange light. Mira stepped outside, her eyes wide. "It is beautiful," she whispered. The humans felt something inside them change. Their thoughts became clearer, their senses sharper. They could feel the heartbeat of the world within their own bodies. It was as if the line between human and nature had faded. For the next few days, strange miracles began to happen. Wounded people healed faster. Plants grew overnight. Animals started moving closer to human shelters, not with fear but with calm curiosity. The bond between species was growing stronger, as if the planet's energy had reached into every living thing. Ryan began to record everything. He noticed that every time he played the pulse from the radio, the plants nearby reacted. Their leaves turned toward the sound. The water in containers rippled gently, forming patterns that matched the rhythm. He realized that the Earth was communicating through frequency, sound, vibration, and emotion. It was more advanced than any human technology. It did not use words or logic. It used harmony. Meanwhile, the Varn were struggling. Their ships were failing faster. Their machines corroded wherever they landed. They tried to build new power sources, but nothing worked. The planet was rejecting them. Reports came from survivors across the world. In the mountains, massive storms had destroyed the Varn's mining stations. In the deserts, the sands moved with such force that entire alien camps disappeared. The oceans rose and swallowed their coastal outposts. The Varn tried to fight back. They used their weapons to burn forests and drain the seas. But the more they attacked, the stronger the planet became. For every tree they burned, 10 more grew. For every ocean creature they killed, the tides carried hundreds more to the surface. The humans saw this and grew brave again. Small resistance groups began to unite. They sent messages through the same frequencies Rian had discovered. The signal became a song of unity, carried through the air across continents. People called it the Song of the Earth. Rian's name spread among them, though he never sought fame. They said he was the man who heard the Earth's voice. Some called him the listener. Others said he was chosen by the planet to guide humanity's rebirth. But Rian never saw himself as a leader. He only wanted to understand and protect what was left of their home. One night, while adjusting the radio's frequency, he felt something new. The pulse became a message in his mind, clear and warm. It showed him images, waves of energy flowing through mountains, forests, and seas. Every living being was connected by invisible lines of power. Then he saw the Varn's main base, a massive black structure near what used to be the Arctic Circle. It was the heart of their invasion, and it was poisoning the planet's core. Rian understood that the Earth was asking for help. It could not destroy the base alone. The humans had to act. He called a meeting. The survivors gathered in the largest open area of the ruins. Fires burned around them and the night air was cool. Rian spoke clearly, his voice steady. "The Earth is awake, but it needs us," he said. "The Varn built their main base in the far north. It is hurting the planet. If we destroy it, we can end this war." Oren nodded slowly. "How can we fight something so powerful?" Rian looked at the sky. "Not with weapons. With the planet's strength. We will use its song." He explained his plan. The humans would travel north, carrying portable transmitters tuned to the Earth's frequency. When activated together, they would create a wave of energy that could break the Varn's shields. It was dangerous, but no one refused. They knew this was their chance to save their world. Before they left, Mira placed her hand on the soil near the tower. "We will come back," she whispered. "Protect this place until we return." The ground pulsed softly beneath her hand as if answering. The journey was long and hard. The survivors traveled through forests filled with glowing plants and across rivers that seemed alive with light. The animals guided them, clearing paths and warning them of danger. When they reached the northern plains, they saw the Varn base. It was enormous, a dark fortress built from alien metal that reflected no light. Around it, the ground looked dead. Rian and the group set up their transmitters in a circle around the base. The machines hummed as they powered on. The pulse began to flow through them, merging into one massive wave. Inside the base, alarms sounded. The Varn rushed to their ships, firing energy blasts into the sky. But it was too late. The Earth's song had already begun. The ground shook as the pulse grew stronger. The air glowed with green light. Lightning danced across the sky. The machines of the Varn screamed and broke apart. The fortress cracked, its black walls melting like wax. The humans fell to their knees as the energy surrounded them. They felt no pain, only peace. It was as if the planet was thanking them. When the light faded, the base was gone. The land was quiet again. The northern sky shone with colors brighter than ever before. Ryan looked at his friends and smiled. "It is done," he said. "The Earth is free." The others smiled back, tears in their eyes. They had not only survived, they had become part of something greater. As they began their journey home, the wind carried a soft melody through the air. It was the same rhythm that had started it all, the song of a living world united once again. The sky was burning red as the Varn fleet descended once more. Their ships floated like massive black stones, their lights cutting through the clouds. Each city that still stood trembled under the sound of their engines. The people of Earth had fought for months, but this time it was different. This time the Varn had brought something far worse. Rian stood inside the old tower, his hands resting on the transmitter he had built with his small team. Around him were others from the Resistance, tired but strong. Their faces were pale, but their eyes were filled with determination. They had seen what Earth could do when it woke. They had seen forests move, seas rise, and creatures fight beside them. They knew now that they were not alone. The message from the Varn came through every screen and every speaker. A deep, cold voice spoke in their language. "Humans," it said, "your planet is defiant. You resist, but your end is near. We will burn what you call home and erase you from this soil. The galaxy will remember Earth as a silent grave." The people listened in silence. Some cried, others clenched their fists. Ryan looked at the sky through the cracked window. He could see the shape of the weapon the Varn had brought. It was larger than any ship before, glowing with strange energy. It was called the World Furnace. It had the power to burn entire continents. Mira, a young scientist who had joined the Resistance, stood beside Rian. "If they use that weapon, nothing will survive," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. "Then we must act before they fire it," he replied. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Ryan would use the transmitter to reach the living web that connected all creatures on Earth. It was risky because the last time he tried, his body had almost shut down from the strain. But this time there was no other choice. Outside, the wind began to rise. The animals near their camp sensed what was coming. Birds circled the tower. Wolves stood near the broken walls, watching the sky with silent anger. The bond between humans and nature had grown stronger each day. Even the trees seemed to lean toward the city as if waiting for a call. The Resistance members began their preparations. Mira checked the power lines. Old generators buzzed weakly, their lights flickering. "We can only send one strong signal," she said. "After that, the system will burn." Ryan smiled faintly. "One signal is all we need." Far above the Earth, the Varn leaders gathered inside their command vessel. They watched the planet below with contempt. The leader, called Varric, raised his metallic arm and gave the order. "Prepare the furnace," he said. "When the humans see the fire, they will beg for death." But before the weapon could charge fully, something strange began to happen. The ocean waves under their ship grew wild. The wind outside the hull screamed like a living thing. Instruments inside the vessel began to fail. Their sensors showed movement on the surface. Massive, countless movements. On the ground, Ryan closed his eyes and began the transmission. The machine hummed with energy. He felt the signal move through him, spreading like a heartbeat across the world. His mind filled with voices. Not human voices, but the voices of the earth itself. He heard the deep song of whales calling from the oceans. He heard the rustling of leaves and the thunder of stampeding herds. He felt the pulse of the planet beneath his feet, alive and aware. He spoke softly into the transmitter. "They will burn our home. If you can hear us, rise." At first there was only silence. Then the ground began to shake. Across every land, creatures of every kind moved as one. In the forests, lions and elephants charged through alien camps. In the frozen north, polar bears smashed through Varn machines. In the seas, whales and sharks attacked underwater bases. Even the smallest insects became a swarm that blinded the invaders. The Varn tried to fight back, but their weapons jammed and their machines overheated. Their energy fields failed as vines tore through their metal hulls. The earth itself was fighting them. In the tower, Ryan fell to his knees, his body shaking. Mira grabbed his shoulders. "Stay with us," she said. "You are the link." Ryan's voice was weak, but he smiled. "It's not me. It's all of us." Outside the tower, the humans joined the battle. Farmers, soldiers, engineers, and children all fought together. They used simple weapons, but they fought with purpose. They had something far greater than power. They had unity. The Varn began to fall back, their leaders shouting in panic. Varric watched his soldiers being torn apart by storms and beasts. He screamed in disbelief. "This is not possible. This world is cursed." Ryan, still connected to the web of life, saw the image of the furnace ship. It was preparing to fire even as it was being torn apart by vines and lightning. If it succeeded, everything would end. He focused his mind and sent one final message through the living network. "Together," he whispered. The oceans answered. Massive waves rose higher than any before. They struck the Varn ships, pulling them into the depths. Lightning flashed across the sky, striking with perfect aim. Mountains shook, sending avalanches down upon the invaders' bases. Then, from the heart of the ocean, a great roar was heard. A shape rose from the deep, an ancient creature larger than any whale, older than any legend. It crashed into the furnace ship, tearing it apart. The fire that was meant to destroy Earth was swallowed by the sea. The battle raged for hours, but the end was already clear. The Varn fleet broke apart. Their machines failed, their soldiers fled. Their pride and power meant nothing before the will of a living world. When the sun finally rose, the sky was filled with smoke, but the land below still lived. The resistance cheered as the last of the Varn ships began to retreat into the stars. Mira helped Ryan stand. His face was pale, his strength fading. "You did it," she said. Ryan shook his head slowly. "No, we all did it. Humans, animals, the sea, the sky. Earth itself stood today." He looked at the horizon. The storm clouds were clearing. Birds flew in the bright morning light. The air smelled of rain and new life. For the first time in many years, Earth felt alive again. Far above, the Varn leader watched from his ship as the planet grew smaller beneath him. He clenched his fist and spoke to his crew. "This world is dangerous. We will never return here. Let the galaxy be warned. Earth belongs to no one." On the ground, the humans gathered near the ruins. They helped the wounded, fed the animals that had fought beside them, and looked up at the calm sky. Mira placed her hand on Ryan's shoulder. "What happens now?" she asked. Ryan smiled softly. "Now we rebuild. But we remember who saved us. The world had changed forever. The people knew they were not the masters of Earth. They were its children. And their mother had just proven that she could fight harder than any army in the stars." That night, as the survivors sat around fires, the forests glowed faintly. The creatures rested peacefully. The oceans were calm once more. But deep inside the heart of the planet, the ancient voice whispered again, soft, strong, and full of warmth. It said only one thing: "We are one." And so the people of Earth understood that their strength did not come from machines or weapons. It came from the bond that tied every living being to the world itself. The invaders had tried to destroy them, but instead, they had awakened something greater. The Earth had answered their cruelty not with endless hate, but with fierce, protective mercy, and that mercy had saved all life on the planet. The stars above shone brighter that night, as if the universe itself was watching and remembering the day when humanity stood with their world. And together, They won. The first light of dawn fell across the ruins of the city. Smoke had cleared from the battle, and the air smelled of wet soil, fresh grass, and the salt of the sea. The humans who had survived the invasion walked carefully among the ruins, stepping over the remains of Varn machines that had been swallowed by the forests or melted by the Earth's own power. Rian moved slowly, supporting himself on a piece of broken concrete. His hands trembled, not from exhaustion alone, but from the weight of what had happened. He had never imagined that a day like this could come. After months of fear and silence, the Earth had shown its strength and humanity had lived. Mira walked beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It is hard to believe," she said softly. "Everything we feared is gone. The Varn are gone. The world furnace is destroyed," Ryan nodded. "It is hard to believe, but it is real. The planet did not need our weapons. It needed us to stand with it." The other survivors gathered around them. Farmers, engineers, teachers, and children looked at the land with wonder. Many of the humans had been hiding for months, afraid to step outside, afraid to even hope. Now they were free, and the feeling of freedom filled them with tears and laughter all at once. Even the animals had returned. Wolves padded softly across the broken streets, keeping watch. Birds filled the air with song. Deer grazed near the river that had returned to life after being blocked by alien machines. The oceans had calmed, and the whales that had helped in the fight sang long and deep, their voices carrying across the water. The humans began to speak of rebuilding. They cleared paths, planted crops, and cleaned the water. They repaired old buildings but left space for nature to flourish. For the first time, they understood that Earth was not just land or machines or cities. It was alive, and they were part of it. Ryan and Mira led a small group to check on the forests outside the city. They walked slowly, amazed at how the trees had grown in weeks. Vines reached out to touch the remnants of Varn machines, wrapping around them gently as if cleaning the land of what did not belong. "This is incredible," Mira said, placing her hand on the rough bark of a tree. "It is like the forest remembers who we are." Ryan smiled. "It does. Every part of this planet remembers, and it has chosen to protect life." As the days passed, humans traveled to other parts of the world. They found that Earth's strength had not been limited to one city. In deserts, sandstorms had swallowed alien camps. In mountains, avalanches had crushed Varn machines. In the oceans, whales and other creatures had destroyed floating platforms and underwater bases. The planet itself had acted as a guardian, protecting life with mercy and power. People from other continents came to visit the surviving cities. They marveled at what had happened and learned from those who had fought alongside the planet. Stories of courage, unity, and the song of the earth spread quickly. Children were taught not only to read and write, but to listen to the rhythms of nature. Farmers learned how to work with the land, not against it. Engineers studied the ways that plants and animals had destroyed the Varn machines, learning from the planet's intelligence. Rian spent his days helping to repair communication systems. He wanted to connect the survivors from all corners of the world. He set up new transmitters that could carry messages using the same frequency that had linked humans to the living web of Earth. Through these waves, humans began to feel a deeper connection with the creatures around them. One evening, as the sun set in the west, Ryan climbed the tower with Mira. The sky glowed in soft shades of pink and gold. The city below them was quiet but alive. Fires burned gently in small hearths. Animals wandered freely. People spoke and laughed. "Do you think the Varn will ever come back?" Mira asked. Rian shook his head. "Not as they were. They underestimated this world. They thought power and machines could conquer life. But life itself is stronger. They will remember Earth, but they will not return." Mira nodded, watching a flock of birds circle above the tower. "We were lucky," she said. "Not just with the planet, but with each other." Ryan looked out at the horizon. It was never luck. It was unity. Humans, animals, the Earth itself, we all acted together. That is why we survived. At night, the pulse of the planet continued to resonate softly through the radio waves. Ryan would sit and listen, not to control it, but to learn from it. Sometimes he could feel it in his chest, steady and strong like a heartbeat. He understood now that the Earth was alive in ways humans had never truly known. It was patient, kind, and merciful, but also fierce when life was threatened. The survivors built their homes with care. Forests were left standing around cities. Rivers were protected and new gardens flourished where old ruins had been. Animals were no longer hunted for sport. Humans fed them, nurtured them, and shared space with them. The bond between life and human civilization had grown stronger than anyone could have imagined. One morning, a group of children ran to Ryan with a small notebook. They had drawn pictures of the battle, showing whales leaping from the ocean, forests moving, and the humans standing with the earth. "You saved the world," one child said. Ryan smiled, kneeling to their level. "No one saved the world alone. The earth saved itself. We just listened and stood with it." Later that day, Mira led a group to plant young trees across the city. Ryan watched as children and adults worked together, digging small holes, placing roots carefully, and watering the new life. The earth had given them a second chance, and they honored it with every action. Word spread across the globe about the planet's power. Humans in other lands began to listen to the earth, learning to feel its pulse. Slowly, the survivors rebuilt not just cities, but a civilization that respected life in all forms. Even the oceans seemed to welcome the humans back. Fishermen found the fish plentiful, guided by the songs of whales. Birds and land animals traveled freely, no longer hiding from human presence. The balance between life and humans was returning, stronger than it had been for centuries. Ryan often sat on the tower at night watching the stars. He thought about the Varn and their machines. They had come to conquer and destroy, but they had awakened something far greater. The earth had answered their cruelty with mercy. It had protected life, not just humans, but every living creature on the planet. Mira joined him, holding a small lantern. "Do you think other planets have life like ours?" she asked. Ryan shook his head slowly. "Maybe, but none will have the bond we have. Here life is connected in ways they cannot understand. That is why we survived. That is why Earth will always endure." The nights grew quieter with each passing week. The pulse of the planet remained steady and strong. Ryan could hear it when he closed his eyes, the slow, calm rhythm of life. It reminded him that even in darkness, hope could survive. Years later, the children who had helped plant the trees grew up knowing the story of the Varn and the Earth's mercy. They were taught that strength was not measured in weapons or machines, but in unity, respect, and courage. They learned to listen to the rhythms of life around them. The humans never forgot what the Earth had done. They never again thought of it as just land to build upon or resources to take. They cared for it, nurtured it, and protected it, because they understood that life itself was the greatest power of all. Ryan and Mira walked together along a river one afternoon. The water was clear, filled with fish that leaped and played. Birds circled above. The sun shone bright, and the wind carried the scent of flowers and grass. "Do you think the Varn will ever try to return?" Mira asked. Ryan smiled. "If they do, they will find that Earth remembers. Life will rise against them, stronger than before. They will plead for mercy, and the creatures of this world will answer again." Mira nodded, and together they walked, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath their feet. Every step was a reminder that life could endure, that courage could prevail, and that mercy could be stronger than any weapon. As they looked up at the sky, the stars shone brightly. The earth was alive, and its song filled the air. Humans, animals, and plants lived together in harmony, and for the first time in centuries the world was at peace. The story of the Varn and the earth's mercy became legend. Humans taught it to their children and their children's children. They spoke of courage, unity, and respect for all living things. And they remembered that day when the planet itself rose to protect its children. They pleaded for mercy, Ryan would say to anyone who asked about the battle, and the creatures of Earth answered. And that was the truth. The Earth had not only defended life, it had shown humanity the meaning of unity, courage, and mercy. The pulse continued, steady and calm, a reminder that the world would always endure as long as its children listened and acted with care.